El Alamein, Egypt was the site of two very important World War II battles fought in 1942, and now the town on Egypt's Mediterranean coast has a World War II military museum, memorials, and cemeteries of soldiers who died in those battles. I'm going to show you the El Alamein War Cemetery, the El Alamein Military Museum, and also the Italian Memorial at El Alamein. There's also a German war cemetery that was closed at the making of this video, but I'll talk about where that is and how you can visit it as well. If you don't know me already, my name is Gus, and I started Egypt Adventures Travel because I love Egypt and I want to help people have amazing trips there. I lead several group tours to Egypt per year. I recently launched a group tour to Jordan, and I also help plan private tours and join as a private guide. You can go to my website, egyptadventurestravel.com, to learn about upcoming group tours or just to read lots of information about travel to Egypt. El Alamein is actually El Alamein in Arabic, which means the two worlds. And this city is located about an hour-and-a-half drive west of Alexandria and about a 3-hour drive northwest of Cairo. Now, El Alamein is a very developed resort center on Egypt's north coast of the Mediterranean Sea. But back during the battle, of course, this wasn't the case. You'll notice that the El Alamein War Cemetery and also the Military Museum are located in the city center, and then just a bit out of the city, around a 20-minute drive, you'll find the Italian Memorial and also the German Memorial and War Cemetery. Like I said, this was closed when we visited, so I won't be able to show you these two German sites, but I'll talk about how you can visit them when you're in Egypt. You need a private vehicle in order to visit the sites at El Alamein because they're pretty far away from Cairo and Alexandria, and there isn't convenient public transit that will take you to any of the sites. You might be able to find a driver on Uber or InDrive who would take you around to different sites in El Alamein, but I think the best way to arrange a trip is to hire a private driver and to have a private tour guide in order to take you around to all the sites and maximize your day so you don't waste any time with U-turns, misdirections, and not knowing where to go. For this particular trip, I did something I never said I would do in Egypt, which is rent a car and drive myself. I got an international driver's permit, which was very easy at AAA in the US, and then had my US driver's license. And I used that in order to drive around to all of these sites from Cairo and spend a few days on the Mediterranean Sea as well. Don't worry, I have a friend who's with me who's taking all of this video content as I focus on driving on the crazy Egyptian roads. I don't recommend renting a car for a first timer in Egypt because it's really intense to drive in Egypt, but if you've got a bit of gumption and courage, you could definitely go that route. For the first time ever, I am about to drive a car in Egypt, so pray for me. Instead of worrying about renting a car and driving on the confusing and crazy roadways in Egypt, if you would rather arrange a private driver and a private guide for your trip, reach out to me via email, gus@egyptadventurestravel.com, and I'll be able to help you out and get you hooked up for your trip to El Alamein. Let's give the El Alamein Military Museum a visit and check out what's inside. The El Alamein Military Museum is open 7 days a week from 9 o'clock in the morning until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But I'd recommend arriving by 3 o'clock if you want to visit in the afternoon so that you have enough time to see all of the exhibitions inside and to see the outside. This is the 200 Egyptian pound ticket and the 75 Egyptian pound photo ticket, which at the making of this video is just over $5 total to visit the museum. And once we got there, we were able to park our car right outside for free. Inside the first hall of the museum, they have small sections dedicated to each country that was involved in the 1942 conflict, going over how they were involved at the two battles at El Alamein and giving some context and background. With this video, I try to capture every single display in the museum so that you can get an overview of what the museum would look like and you can decide if this would be something that would be worth it to visit when you come to Egypt on your Egypt adventure. But I'm not going to go very in-depth in the video to talk about each of the displays in a lot of detail, so I encourage you to pause the video, rewind, and even zoom in on your screen if you want to read more information about any of the still photographs or the videos that I took of the different galleries. After the first hall that talks about the context behind the 1942 battles and gives small details on each of the countries that are involved, the museum moves into dedicating each hall to a specific country. So this first hall was dedicated to Italy and has lots of different artifacts and information about the Italian forces at Alamein, what they did, how they were involved, and has a lot of different things remaining from the military forces that were found in the surrounding area. After the Italian hall, there's a hall that's dedicated to Egypt. Obviously, since this war was fought in Egypt, there was a lot of involvement with the Egyptian military, and this hall goes into that in more detail. It also has a lot more general information about the Egyptian military and Egypt's military history. For folks who are really interested in this kind of stuff, there are some more museums that you can check out in Cairo and in other locations around the country, but this is what the hall looks like that's dedicated to Egypt in the El Alamein Military Museum. Throughout the video, you'll notice that there's hardly anybody visiting the museum, which was really nice because we had the place basically to ourselves. The whole day, there was one tour group of about 30 people going to the different military sites in El Alamein, but other than that, when we went to these places, they were basically empty. After the halls dedicated to Italy and dedicated to Egypt was the hall dedicated to Germany. Again, the same type of theme, a hall dedicated to one country, talking about that country's involvement in the battles, the context, and the aftermath, with tons and tons of artifacts from the time period of the battles, things that were actually found in El Alamein, and things that are from the surrounding area. After the hall dedicated to Germany is the hall dedicated to Great Britain, and this hall has the same type of organization where they talk about all of the different important people who were involved in the war and going over all of the ways that Britain was involved at the battles in El Alamein, and also sharing a lot of different artifacts from that time period. The museum also had several maps that really helped to give context and to illustrate what happened during the two battles in 1942. All in all, the museum's organization was top-notch and made it a really good experience to visit and to learn about the history. After exiting the museum, there's this large diagram of North Africa and these history placards that talk about what happened in this area during World War II. Also outside of the museum is this small cafe that's more like a little snack stand that had soft drinks, water, and chips for purchase, and would be a good place to sit and to take a break while touring the museum and the grounds. Wrapping around the museum, they have a lot of different artifacts that are larger and won't fit inside the museum itself. We're talking about things like tanks and weapons and even a couple of fighter planes. You'll notice the city of New El Alamein in the background with all of those skyscrapers. That is a brand new city that Egypt just started building several years ago. Even though this area has always had a few people living in it, the north coast of Egypt's Mediterranean Sea has had a lot of development in the last couple of decades. All of these artifacts outside that were too large to be put on display in the museum are interesting to read about because they have display placards going into detail about what each piece is and where it was found. This fighter plane was especially impressive because it was found out in the desert, brought to this museum, restored back to what it would have looked like originally with some of the components on display inside the museum itself, and then it was finished at the time of the 75th anniversary of the Battle of El Alamein, when the museum also went under a refurbishing. All in all, for the El Alamein Military Museum, considering it's a pretty small museum with only about 6 galleries, each the size of a school classroom, and this outdoor area that has these large pieces of military equipment, probably an average tourist will spend about 1 hour at this site, and the most die-hard military history fan who wants to read every single placard and take a lot of time to take pictures will probably only need about 2 hours at this site, which means that you can visit the El Alamein Military Museum, the War Cemetery, the Italian Memorial, and, if it's open, the German Memorial and War Cemetery, all during a one-day trip. So what do you think so far of El Alamein? Write a comment and let me know if you would be interested enough to visit this military history museum on Egypt's north coast. And now let's head to our next destination, the El Alamein War Cemetery that's right by the Military Museum. Welcome to the El Alamein War Memorial and British Commonwealth Cemetery. When you arrive to the El Alamein Memorial, the first area you'll see off to the right is a memorial that's dedicated to the Australian soldiers who fought in the 1942 battles. The small area has some informational placards that explain the involvement of the Australian 9th Division at El Alamein, and then the memorial itself is an obelisk-like structure with a couple of plaques on either side talking about the soldiers who fought and who died at the two battles in 1942. This is what the surrounding area looks like at the El Alamein Memorial and Cemetery. There's the cemetery itself with the city of El Alamein in the background. That large cross is the area at the end of the cemetery that I'm going to show you next. This large memorial gate serves as the entrance to the war cemetery, and inside of the memorial gate, they have more than 8,500 names written on blocks, and these names are for soldiers who died in different campaigns out in the Western Desert that we don't have a known grave for. They divided up the names based on the country and also based on the different branch or division of the military for that country. So if you search, you might be able to find exactly a specific name that you're looking for, but there are more than 8,500 names on the inside of this memorial gate, so it's a really sobering experience to just look at all of those people who sacrificed their lives during the Western Desert campaigns in World War II. There was a small box in the memorial gate that should have the register, however, it wasn't in there when I took this video, so here's the contact information in case you want to reach out to someone ahead of time if you're visiting this memorial and you want to look for a specific name. Throughout the site, they also had more informational placards talking about World War II and specifically focusing on the North African campaigns and the battles at El Alamein. So even though I didn't know a lot about this, I felt like I learned a lot by visiting these sites. Past the memorial gate is the El Alamein War Cemetery, and this war cemetery has more than 7,000 graves from soldiers from the Commonwealth who died in World War II in North African campaigns, and there are more than 100 graves of soldiers from different nationalities. You'll notice, though, that this is not the cemetery for Italian soldiers or German soldiers, since they had a different area where their soldiers were buried that I'll show you later on in this video. It's definitely possible to find a specific grave for a specific person, but you would probably want to look up that information ahead of time to try to find out a location of that specific headstone before coming to El Alamein, because it might be difficult to try to find that on site, and the on-site Egyptian staff didn't seem like they would be able to help find an exact grave very easily. Getting in touch with the Commonwealth War Graves Commission by going to their website, sending them an email, or giving them a phone call is probably the best idea for getting the information that you need on how to find a specific grave before visiting this memorial and cemetery. You probably can tell from the video, but I was the only person at the entire memorial and cemetery at the making of the video. I had the entire place to myself. The tour group that you saw during my video at the museum, they weren't here, so I was the only person in the entire area. This large cross serves as the ending point for the memorial cemetery, and you can climb all the way up to the top of this platform that the cross is on, and it gives you a really nice view of the entire cemetery and the memorial gate from the back side. I could tell that this site was very intentionally planned out and created, and I also could tell that the maintenance and upkeep of the site, they're doing a really good job keeping this memorial beautiful and pristine for folks who want to pay it a visit. It's completely free for people to go, and it's open 7 days a week. The Italian Cemetery and War Memorial is the last site that I'll show you at El Alamein. This was another site that we drove to, and parking was free. The site was about 15 minutes away from the city center, and it was an easy drive, but you'll want to have your own private driver if you're planning on visiting these far-flung sites on your own. The memorial was free and open to the public. This is a look at a small museum that they had on site. The museum went over specific information about the Italian soldiers at El Alamein and had artifacts that you see here in display cases. The small one-room museum was well laid out, with some of the display cases having really easy to follow labels and descriptions that explained the history and the context of the 1942 battles. As someone who did not know much about the history of El Alamein before visiting, it really gave me a good picture of what happened during these famous two World War II battles. Like the El Alamein War Memorial Museum, I'm not going to go into detail explaining everything that you'll see in the video, but I just want to show you what you would see if you came and visited the Italian Memorial Cemetery and Museum at El Alamein. Feel free to pause the video, rewind, zoom in to read more and to see more, but I wanted to give you an idea of what the entirety of this small museum looks like so that you know what to expect if you plan on visiting El Alamein during your time in Egypt. You've probably noticed by looking at the parking lot and the museum that there was nobody else here at the site when we were visiting, except for one tour group of about 30 people, the same people that we saw at the El Alamein Military Museum. We were visiting in July in the summertime, which is high season for the North Coast on the Mediterranean, but it technically is low season for travelers visiting the rest of Egypt. This site is several miles west of New El Alamein city, so we drove here. There's ample parking on site, and it took us about 15 minutes to drive here from New El Alamein city. Once here, there's hardly any tourists here, even though summertime is the busiest time for the North Coast in Egypt. We basically have the place all to ourselves as we walk around and explore. After visiting the small museum, we walked up to the Italian Memorial at El Alamein, and this marble tower sits on the Mediterranean Sea. It's dedicated to the more than 4,000 Italian soldiers who died in the 1942 battles, and there's more than 35,000 soldiers who were missing after those battles. Even though we visited in the middle of the summertime, the weather on Egypt's north coast is really mild at this time of year. It's why so many people flock to the beaches of the Mediterranean Sea every summer. The memorial was designed and constructed in the 1950s by the Italian government. An Italian cemetery had already existed at the site since 1943, but they built this monument in the 50s and put thousands of names of soldiers who died in the battles at El Alamein in 1942. The inside of the memorial also honors the more than 35,000 Italian soldiers who died in the battles, but who were unidentified in the end. This shows you what the outside of the memorial looks like, and as you can see, the surrounding landscape at El Alamein is either desert or the Mediterranean Sea. The memorial gives nice views out of the Mediterranean, and you can see here how the city of El Alamein, or New El Alamein as they say, is being built up on the coastline. The German War Memorial is right next to the Italian cemetery. It's only a 5-minute drive away, but like I said at the beginning of the video, I can't show you this on video because we weren't able to access the site. There's a brand new presidential palace that they built on the Mediterranean coast that uses some of the same roadways that we would need to take to go to the German memorial. And when we were making the video driving around El Alamein, they had blocked off the roadway, the Egyptian police and military, because the president was at the presidential palace at the time, so no traffic was able to come in. There's no way to know ahead of time if this is going to be blocked off or not, so hopefully when you visit El Alamein, you'll be able to go to the German memorial as well. So after watching this video, what do you think about El Alamein, and what questions do you have about visiting the World War II sites here? I love reading every single comment from each of my viewers and replying to every single one. I hope this video gave you a good idea of what you'll experience if you decide to visit El Alamein during your trip to Egypt. And if you want to see more and learn more about the new modern city of El Alamein that Egypt is building on the north coast of the Mediterranean Sea, check out my YouTube channel in a couple of weeks because I'll have a new video out talking all about New El Alamein and what you can see on this new city on the Mediterranean.